time now once again for getting lumped up with my friends. It's RockerMike and Rob that you should know, and you'll find them here on the Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on the Rock Show.
In his sights then anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Nina Antonia book about the dolls and some other things that have been written about Johnny Thunders and stuff like that, they write Rik out. Now, on the conversely, Sylvain, before he passed away, came out with a book called "There's No Bones in Ice Cream" about his life.
Yeah.
Okay? And he really wrote some very nice things about Rik. And also in Paul Stanley's book recently that he wrote about 4 years ago, he mentioned the Brats and how they gave him their first gig in the city and all that stuff, said great things. But yeah, I mean, this happens where bands try to rewrite their own history. And
I just don't understand the animosity attached to this by some of the fans.
I don't get it. I don't want to understand why the fans are so, like that.
It's like, I go to post something, to share something, and there'll be some idiot asshole coming in. Oh, here's Rik Fox again for talking about himself.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't win for losing.
But, I everything else that's happened in your life, the WASP is just a 4-month period. Okay. Right. That, you've had this very interesting period even before you were in WASP. And then afterwards, I mean, you would end up in Steeler, okay, and record the first album with them. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Coming from New York, especially without, advanced press or internet or anything like that, back when I did, it's all word of mouth. So when I come out in the New York rock scene, it's just, I can't prove who I was or what I did to the people in California. There's nothing really to back it up. I could just say, well, I worked with Thor and other guys in Kiss. I worked for a lot of bands at Gildersleeves doing lights. That don't mean dooley squat to people in California. That's like so far removed. Right. They have no idea what that's like. You might as well be the other side of the universe. They don't know what that is.
Yeah.
The only time each coast would see what's going on was like pictures in Rock Scene magazine.
That's the only way you'd know. Yeah.
Like that. So. That's how I found out about Rodney Bingenheimer, and he had a haircut like Keith and the Brats.
Right, exactly.
So, and California had a space band called Zolar X. And they looked like those Star Trek, the creatures with the blonde hair and with the antennas.
The antennas sticking up. Yep.
Yeah. So each coast had its own space band too. Like that.
That's true.
But anyway, so where was I going with this? Trying to prove who I was and what I did was a little difficult, like that to help me get gig. I once I got out of WASP, it was like stranger in a strange land. I'm on another planet. I'm cut loose. How do I network? I don't know anybody.
Did you think about coming back to New York? Did you consider that, or you were going to stay there no matter what?
It passed my mind really quick.
Yeah.
I was going to be like, all right, what am I going to go back to? Playing the covers in the clubs. How many years can I do that? I don't know. So I just decided to stay in California, and I was trying to network and meet bands. I had auditioned for Rat. I auditioned for the Greg Leon Invasion. One of the loudest guitar players you ever heard. I auditioned for. I jammed with Hellion. There were various bands I was trying to just get known with, and now I have to try and learn their stuff like on a dime, in an audition like that. Stephen Pearcy gave me a cassette demo of the Wasp of the Rat songs, but with no lyrics on it, so I had something to learn.
Right.
But me and Blotzer didn't get along because he likes bass players to play with their fingers, and I was using a pick. So go figure, like that. Anyway, so. I put an ad in Music Connection magazine, funnily enough, and I said, bass player worked, I know Kiss, I worked with Thor from out from New York, blah blah blah, like that. And I got a call from Ron Keel, Now, I had just seen Steeler at the Roxy with the original lineup. His lineup that came out from Nashville. And they were all very good musicians, technically speaking. Everybody brought something great to the table. But Ron was the only guy that had that superstar image, the superstar look. I said, that guy's going to be famous, like that. And I'm standing there with Eric Carr. We're watching Steeler.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And Eric was asking me if I would set him up on a date with a girl that I had briefly dated while I was in WASP. Turns out she was the model on the cover of the Poison album, Open Up and Say years later.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Wow. What a small world.
So, yeah, I hate to have to paint it. Anyway. Boom, boom. So anyway, so Eric and I are watching Steeler, and I'm like, wow, they're really loud. They're a great band, hard rock, simple stuff, like rock, heavy, like that. And so not having met Ron yet, he calls me up and contacts me and says, I heard your name around and you got a look and blah, blah, blah. And I'm getting ready. Here we go again. I'm going to replace somebody else's bass player, like that. And he says, come and meet me. And I went to what they call the Steeler Mansion, which was a bunch of gutted storefronts full of roaches.
Oh, shit.
So calling it Steeler Mansion was kind of an inside joke.
Yeah.
And it was in like a really bad part of town. It wasn't quite South Central, but it was almost that.
Yeah.
And like that. So I walk in, and it's like I said, it's a culture shock. 3 gutted storefronts with just the support walls. They had a rehearsal room.
Yeah.
Ron was sleeping on some milk crates with a mattress and with a curtain around it, like that. Really Spartan, extremely Spartan. It was no rock star lifestyle here at this place, So I go and sit. Ron sits on the drum riser, and I'm like, okay, where's the gear? There's like no gear. These guys came fully equipped, their own truck, their own PA system, their own lighting, and the road crew. They were self-contained. A lot of bands from the Southeast and the East Coast, doing like White Tiger and those bands. They all carried their own stuff. They were self-supportive. Yeah. I walk in, there's nothing there. I said, what happened to everything? Ron says, well, I fired the band. I said, that's a big leap of faith considering how big you guys are.
Jeez.
He says, well, we can't compete. We can't compete with bands like Rat and Motley Crue. I gotta up my game. And you've got an image. People said, check this guy Rik Fox out. He looks like a rock star. And Ron goes, that's what I want. I want a band full of rock stars.
Wow.
So he says, here's a demo. Learn these songs. No promises. We'll see what happens after that.
Now, was Yngwie in there yet?
Nope.
This is before that.
Nope. Ron had just fired the whole band.
Yeah.
So it was like right within that same time frame.
Was Yngwie on his radar, or he didn't even know about him yet at that point?
Shortly after, from what I remember, shortly after.
Yeah.
Wow. We just lost Rob.
Yeah, he'll come back. That always happens.
He's like a boomerang. He'll be back.
Oh, totally.
So anyway, I took the demo home. I learned the songs. I go back to the place, and Ron and I just sit down one-on-one, face-to-face, like that.
Right.
And we're going over the songs. Oh, there he is, Rob. Going over the songs. Apparently, it was something he liked. He says, our new drummer is coming back from Texas shortly. When he comes back, we'll rehearse a 3-piece. I said, all right, that was Mark Edwards.
Right.
Because Mark had been the new drummer that just came in.
Right.
Wow. And Mark was like Tommy Aldridge, and they're both like, from Texas, like that. So they had a similar look and similar playing style.
Yeah.
So we finally get we get some amps, we plug in, and we start rehearsing that way. And of course, I understand why. You don't want to be overly friendly to a guy that might not work out, when you're going to audition. So Mark was a little distant at first, like that. But we went over the set several times, over and over again, like that, and it got really tight. Mark was the first guy that taught me about actually listening to the rhythm section and where the beat is. And I was playing. Coming from Jersey, the cover circuit, I'm not listening for ahead of the beat, behind the beat, all the technical stuff. I'm playing Sabbath. I'm playing Rush. I'm playing whatever's,
You know these songs.
Yeah. So now I'm playing originals, playing somebody else's originals. It's like, to me, it's just copying it. But he goes, and Mark took the time to integrate with me as a bass player, so we would lock in as a machine.
Yeah.
Like that. And I say we got to a point where we were so in the we were so in your pocket, you wouldn't know your change was gone. You know? we were like,
that's the real rhythm section right there.
We were so tight you couldn't slip a piece of paper in there.
Wow.
You know,
Great saying.
like that. And then so we rehearsed that way, three piece. This was Ron told me I was officially in the band on December 28th, 1982, my birthday at the Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like 7 months after I was out of Wasp. I landed a gig in one of the biggest cornerstone metal bands in Los Angeles at the time.
That's amazing.
Like that.
Wow.
So by the beginning of January, Ron was already on the phone with Varney. They had already been talking.
Shrapnel Records, yeah.
Right. And apparently Ron said he had been discussing Yngwie with Varney. I didn't know about it at the time. I thought the first time we talked was on a three-way phone conference with Yngwie over in Sweden and with Mike Varney.
Yeah.
Like that. And Yngwie sounded like a real, gung-ho, hard-charging guy, highly motivated. I want to come to LA. I want to play in your band, and I want to be part of it, and like that. It was very encouraging to hear somebody who really was like, I'm chomping at the bit to come play in your band. And we had heard his demo. We're sitting there looking at each other. I mean, the only thing you could compare that to at the time was Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Or maybe George Lynch. That was the only guy.
Yeah.
The only two guys that I knew of that could noodle like that.
Right.
Up and down the neck, and sweeping arpeggios and all of this stuff. I'd never heard stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we arranged to have Yngwie fly out from Sweden. Dee Dee Keel, who worked at the Whiskey, was a booking agent, was helping us. She was going out with Ron at the time. So she cut the tape on the State Department and get him to come over like that. And the guy that got off the plane was not the same guy that we talked to on the phone. I mean, it was just like the Viking has landed with attitude.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm into 666 and,
Devil.
The devil was this and paranormal that and UFOs and psychic and witchcraft and maybe he was trying to scare us. I don't know, because he's trying to. He was only 19. I was 27. I was the oldest guy in Steeler.
Yeah.
Ron was like 22.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Yngwie got to experience the same thing I did, the culture shock, when he walked into the Steeler mansion and saw what a dump it was that we lived in. So the bed, the place he got to sleep in was off to the side. There was a kitchen, and that's where all the roaches hung out because the stove was there.
Oh.
And he had to sleep on a water bed that somebody left behind.
Oh my God.
And
Joe's
like that.
apartment.
What's that?
Joe's apartment. Joe's apartment.
Joe's apartment. Yeah, exactly. At night, if you go in there and before you turn the lights on, if you try to turn on the gas on the stove, you can hear all this little tippity tapping sounds hitting the floor. That's all the roaches running out of the stove and jumping down to the floor.
Oh God, horrible!
Wow.
You can hear them hitting the newspapers. They were trying to get out of the channels with a gas.
Get out of the way.
Like that. So anyway, we get to the point of plugging in, and let's see where this is going to go. And he was everything and more, right there live in front of your face like that. But, if you know Steeler songs, you know how simple and straight ahead and driving they are.
Yeah.
It's just not rocket science. If I couldn't play anything different. If my bass playing was too complex, it wouldn't be Steeler music. I had to play pretty much what Ron said the music calls for. That's what I did.
Yeah.
You don't play against the music like that. I couldn't write complex bass lines. There was no place for it.
Yeah.
So again, you got guys saying play simpler. Okay. I already heard that in Wasp. I'm hearing it again. So we got to the point where we're playing, rehearsing, and in between songs, we stop for a second, take a breather. Yngwie says to Ron, "Hey man, is there anything you can do with these songs? I mean, to make them a little cooler, because they're fucking boring."
Oh.
And Ron just stood there, did a slow burn, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
It was the fastest slow burn I ever seen.
It just went nuts, right?
He turned red in seconds.
Oh.
And I looked up at Mark on the drum riser, and Mark looks at me, and Mark's kind of like looked away up at the ceiling. And I'm thinking, did new guy just say what we thought he said? He just insulted the boss's songs.
Jesus.
You know? And Ron's like, okay, man. All right. We'll see. Next day, we start auditioning other guitar players. right in front of Malmsteen.
Wow.
Right in front of him, right?
For the next week, we're auditioning other guitar players, and you know, they weren't quite getting the songs, but I mean, anything compared to Malmsteen is going to sound like it's substandard. But
yeah,
these guys were trying, but it just wasn't catching on.
Yeah.
It finally got to a point where Malmsteen goes, "All right, look, I'll play the game. Let's get this. Let's do this." All right.
Yeah.
And we settled down, and the rest came out, and it was magic. And we fucking kicked ass.
Yeah.
Like that. You know,
that first Steeler record is classic. I mean, everybody sees that.
My West Coast debut. Hang on. I got it right here.
Okay.
I don't know if this is going to be backwards on your screen.
No, it's straight. Yep, I got you. Steeler, Johnny Copeland.
Right there. That was my debut gig in LA, opening for Hughes Thrall.
Okay.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And that's, Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall.
Right.
I don't remember if Frankie Bonelli was playing drums with them. People have asked me that. I don't remember. The night went by like a blur.
Mm-hmm.
It was just too much for me to process and remember everything. But I remember during we're on stage, curtain starts to go up, and there goes my mic stand with the curtain.
Carrying it up?
Oh. Yeah, because they had these heavy velvet curtains at the country club on the stage, like an old movie theater. So, stop. You get the road crew. Jimmy had to run out, lower the curtain, get the mic out of the way. Okay, start over. What a way to start. And the curtain goes up. We go on, and the country club is packed. Everybody in the world is there. And they're all with their jaws on. And they see and hear Malmsteen. Okay. They're like looking at, but this ain't my daddy Steeler from like last month.
No, this is a little different.
This is hardcore in your face Steeler. This is like Steamroller, you know?
Yeah.
This is Abrams tanks coming at you like that. You know, and I look over stage right over my shoulder, and there's Pat Thrall standing in the doorway.
Yeah. Mouth open.
Watching Malmsteen. Now, Pat Thrall that's quite an accomplished guitar player.
Yeah, you're pressing him, yeah.
I saw him at the Palladium with Pat Travers. You know, it was the Boom Boom Out Go to Lights album tour.
Yeah,
and Pat Thrall, Tommy Aldridge, Mars Cowling on bass, Pat Travers. So Pat Thrall was ass kicking guitar player. And he's standing there at the doorway to the stage with his jaw open like that.
Blown away.
Yeah, and after the show, I don't know why I never got a chance to meet Glenn Hughes, but I got to talking to Pat Thrall. And I said, you might not remember me. I said, but I saw you at the Palladium with Pat Travers. I was down like the front row. And then after the show, I was backstage. I was hanging out with you guys. So he goes, I thought that's where you look familiar. He goes, your hair was like brown. Then I said, yeah, now it's black. Like that. So Pat Thrall remembered me. Okay, that's cool.
That's very cool.
I said a few years ago, I'm watching you up on stage, Rockstar, and here we are sharing the same show. Like that. So how cool is that? You know, and Pat was really cool about that. I said, oh, and by the way, I said, I have both of your Automatic Man albums in my collection. And he went, oh, man, thank you. That's so great. Those albums didn't sell well. He was doing like freestyle space jazz stuff.
Yeah, totally different. Yeah.
You know, like sci-fi, I don't know, kind of rhythmic rock. It wasn't like that. Anyway, so I told him, I said, I have both your albums in my collection, and I'm a big fan like that. So that was kind of a highlight of the night. But we were the talk of the town from that night on. It was just like, holy wow, this is not the same Steeler, you know. So and you know, we did a lot of great gigs. We supported Quiet Riot to beyond capacity at that Perkins Palace.
Right.
In Pasadena. We played the country club a few more times with Black and Blue. We sold out the Troubadour. The line was like out the door, down the corner, and around the corner up the street, like that.
Amazing.
So yeah, I was at Steeler for about 6 months. Our last show was in May of '83. First show was in March. Last show was in May. And we're supposed to have a band meeting after the show, and there was nobody there except me and the drummer.
Oh boy.
Wow.
You know, Ron wasn't there, Yngwie wasn't there, and then so Mark comes up to me and says, "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're folding the band and starting over." So,
And that would become Keel, right?
not yet. No,
Not yet?
not yet. I said, "Are you out?" He goes, "No." I said, "Well, Ron's not out." He goes, "No." He goes, Yngwie's not here. He's already in Alcatraz. They're going to become picking him and his gear up.
Yeah.
So, that leaves me. And I said, "Well, what did I do?" He says, "I don't know. That's just what Ron wants to do." There was no real closure on it.
Yeah.
Or a plausible explanation. It's just you're out of the band. You know, so the haters run with that and go, "See, Yngwie quit the band because of you, because you suck. You can't fucking play." So
that's not true. There's no.
This is the shit. This is the shit that people talk about when they want to try to get attention for themselves.
You know, and social media makes all that worse too. You know what I mean? People.
I talked to Ron about that. I talked to Ron. We've played together since, several times, and I talked to Ron about that. He goes, "Yeah, but if there was no band meeting, then how could you be out of the band?" I said, "Well, that's what Mark told me." He goes, "Yeah, but you're the bass player of Steeler now. So what does that tell you? You know, you're back in the band."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and we did a Keel Fest in 2019 in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
And that was great. We did a Steeler reunion. The reunion that the critics said would never happen.
Right.
And we did a tribute to Ronnie Dio. We did Heaven and Hell. You know, because Ron did some stuff with Sabbath. So so there'll be some Sabbath stuff to work with Ron once in a while.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess I'm still the bass player of Steeler for all intents and purposes. You know,
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. I want to change gears one more time. Talk about something that non-music related. Okay, and that's your interest in Polish military history. Okay, and the winged cavalry.
right.
Tell us how you got involved with that whole thing.
They say if it's not fun anymore, then stop doing it. And by the time the 90s came in, the music scene had changed in LA. It was getting closer to the Pearl Jam stuff and
grunge, right?
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to wear oversized cargo pants.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wear combat boots,
flannel shirts.
I'm not going to sing about how terrible my life is because of heroin and how much rain falls in Portland. I just can't. I came from an era where musicians, you were like gods on stage. I mean, look what I grew up with: Kiss, Angel, Stars. Right. That's my roots.
You wanted to make it in those, and that's, and then the grunge scene comes along and it's a bunch of bands that act like they don't want to make it. That's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Well, the Hollywood scene had pretty much swallowed itself because there was so many bands all looked alike. Everybody grew their hair out, so they all had that swinging one length thing. Yeah, and they ripped jeans like that, and it was just everybody looked like it was a fucking cookie cutter assembly line.
Right.
And then you had the Crayola bands, I call, the guys with the teased out hair and trying to look like the dolls. And a lot of these bands really were not that good. I mean, they really weren't. But the kids don't know anything. The girls love seeing bands like that. They like to take care of boys that dress like girls.
That's true. That's true.
And we all did the couch tour. I did too. I'm guilty of that as well. But sometimes you got to do whatever you can do to be resourceful to survive. So, but the whole scene had just degenerated itself, and so the only other alternative was the whole grunge thing. but that's not me.
Yes.
I tried it with a couple of bands. I grew my hair out, played a couple of shows with some bands, and I just wasn't that happy. So I wanted to take a hiatus away from that. I wanted to actually make some money. So I got involved in working in the film industry.
Yeah.
As a production assistant, PA,
Right.
like that. And from one thing led to another, and I elevated up real quick to like working in props.
Right.
With anything an actor touches in a film is a prop. So I was working on films doing that stuff. And then at least I had an income coming in working. And in films, you got to hustle because there's always somebody behind you that might want your job if you're not ready to work. It's like that. So you got to be ready to work all the time. Like that. And then, so one thing led to another, and I started hanging out, going to Renaissance fairs.
Right.
That was an interesting thing. I get, my father raised me into films. A lot of guys get raised into sports. Their dad, they go to the baseball games. Yeah. My dad's influence was the golden era of Hollywood film.
Yeah.
So I grew up watching Errol Flynn and Tyrone Power and all the swashbuckling, all that stuff. This goes on and on. All those kind of you put a sword in my hand and I'm right at home. Like that. I grew up watching all of that stuff. So I figured, well, maybe, I could get involved in doing this. And like most people starting out Ren fairs, the easiest thing to do is pirate. That's your entry level.
Yeah.
So I started out doing a pirate thing. And I played around with a couple of different pirate groups. And I had a knack for this thing. It's now you're acting. It's like you're on stage acting.
Right.
And you're in character like that. So I started kind of making I was like the new guy that came out of nowhere, just like when I came to LA. Here's this new guy on the scene. And I try to dress the part as best as I could afford and work my way in little by little. And then I was hanging out with several different other groups. In Renaissance fairs, we call it the Liz and Hank show because it's either about Henry VIII or Queen Elizabeth. It's all tourist stuff, it entertains the tourists. So there's every country of Western Europe was represented. You got England, Spain, Germany, Italy, France, like that. And so I hooked up with and joined, I got propositioned to join the Royal Spanish Court. So this is like the era of Spain during the time of King Philip and the Armada.
Right.
This group,
1500s or late 1400s? What is it?
1500s, yeah. 1500s.
Yeah.
So and this group had like 40, 50 people in it. They were politically powerful in the Renaissance circle movement like that.
Wow.
So I started to kind of transition over from pirate into like a Spanish type character, and that's when I started growing the handlebar mustache and waxing it and the little goatee. And he looked like one of the D'Artagnan, he looked like one of the Musketeers. That's the look, the gentleman's look of the 16th and 17th century.
Right.
Like that. So, and I got involved in, we were doing stage shows with sword fighting and choreographed comedy, stuff like that on stage. So I wrote my own segment into one of the Spanish court stage shows. And the vice president of the organization, he loved what I pulled all these cliche lines out of all these famous films that Errol Flynn would use and stuff like that, or Alan Hale, and I wrote that, and so now I'm like a full running member with Spanish Court. Well, while all this is going on, I told my dad back in Brooklyn, and I said, "What was going on in Poland over at this time?" And that's when he opened the doors. They said Poland was the largest land empire of Renaissance and Renaissance Europe. 10% of it was nobility, which was more than all of Europe combined. Now, nobility, not royalty, is a big difference.
Yes,
people get those two confused. You can be a nobleman, but you don't. That doesn't necessarily mean you're royalty.
Right. You're not going to get to the crown, but you could still be a nobleman.
Right. But
right.
I would have to create titles for myself and under the sphere of acting, like I was the royal this or the royal that, because I was working right under the Spanish king, kind of like that. So I started to amend my character as to become a Polish ambassador to the Spanish court, which was plausible because they both followed Catholicism, like that.
Right.
And so then I started to now I've become a Polish character, And then my dad goes, you remember when you were younger? And I built that. He took a model of the Lone Ranger up on silver, right, rearing up, and he copied out of a picture out of an old book of a winged hussar. It was a Polish campaign poster from World War II,
right?
A recruiting poster, and I have it up here on my shelf somewhere. He converted this Lone Ranger model into a winged hussar. The guy on the horse, and he had these wings on his back. And with the lance and the lance pennant and everything. He goes, you remember that? And I said, yeah. He goes, that's your ancestry.
They had suit of armor too, right?
Well, from the waist up, yeah.
From the waist up, yeah.
So he started to try and get me as much research information as he could. Again, there really wasn't that much as the internet was starting to come in. There it was very limited in the English language, to find anything like that. And I didn't read Polish fluently enough to go looking through European websites or Polish websites. You could find pictures, you could download pictures and cut them out and put them in a scrapbook like that. But I didn't have anything in English.
Yeah.
But little by little, I would find, okay, there's this book that's in Polish and English that this lady wrote about the Winged Hussars. And then there was this, and then there was it. So I'd start to gather as much information as I could. And the next thing would be to try and put together a character of some kind with this, the armor. There's no place you can in the United States to get that kind of armor. It would be super impossible to afford.
Sure.
And when armorers in the United States are not that well versed with that kind of European armor, I mean, they could make Roman armor. That was easy. But Polish armor was very specific. Like that, the way it was designed, it's based off of Roman anima armor, meaning that the under the breastplate were these other plates that when you lean forward, they would flex in and out like that.
So you could move.
You could bend over, like that.
Yeah.
And the back plate didn't really move that much, but there were mounting points to put these wings on. So my dad was he was the director of heraldry for the Polish Nobility Association Foundation out of Baltimore. And he said there was a museum tour that came over from Poland. It was a combination of like several different Polish museums, all under one theme, one roof. And he went to see this thing in Baltimore at the museum there. He says, it's coming out to California. He goes, I'm telling you, you got to see this. He says, they got the winged armor. I said, and wow. Did you get close to it? He goes, yeah. I said, did you touch it? He goes, well, you're not supposed to because you have acid on your skin.
It could destroy it. Yeah.
If you touch the armor, you can get a fingerprint, it'll rust. Yeah. He goes, well, when nobody was looking, I did. I said, and? He goes, I was at one with our ancestry. I said, hey, yeah, there you go. That's one.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah. So, so the museum tour was coming out to the Museum of Art in San Diego. And I called up the museum and I said, I'm doing research on the Winged Hussars. I'd like to know if I can get one. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. The wings on the back. Yep.
Yeah. Like that. And so I said, I'd like to do some research for this. I'm trying to figure out how the wings are attached to the back of the armor. I don't have access to that information. And the person I spoke to said, well, it's a photography prohibited exhibit. They don't want flash photography because a lot of this stuff is old like that. And I said, all right, well, thank you anyway. And I called my dad up in Brooklyn and I told him what happened. I don't know what happened after that. About 2 days later, I got a call from the curator from the museum in San Diego. It says, Mr. Fox, you've been granted special dispensation for your research, and we're going to assign a docent to take you around the exhibit, and you can take pictures of whatever you want. I was like, oh, awesome, thanks.
Fantastic.
So I rent a car. I'm doing like 90 miles an hour because it's the last day of the exhibit in San Diego before it goes back to Poland. I get down there. And I sign in, and they said, what do you want to see first? And so instead of going through the front of the exhibit all the way around, I said, take me to where the armor is first. So we went around the back way, through against the flow, and they took me, and there's this huge room, this big hall, and there's a captured tent, an Ottoman Turkish tent, the real thing. It's not a make believe. This is one of the real tents. That King Sobieski captured from the Turks at the battle in Vienna.
Right.
Okay. where he stayed.
Which held back the Muslim invasion into Europe.
Exactly.
They were the heroes of that, right?
Right, and there was like various giant paintings. Some of Sobieski's weapons were there. There was a big picture of Czerniecki, another Polish general, hetman, like that. And it's all this, and there's displays dummies of the armor, but there's no back plates. They had the wings mounted to these little elbows. They didn't have a back plate, just a front plate like that. But I'm telling you, I stood in that doorway, and I'm taking all of this in. And I feel like the only way I could describe this is like if I wet my fingertips and stuck them in a socket.
Yeah.
It's like an electric shock went through me from my scalp all the way down to my feet.
Yeah.
You know, and my eyes started to water up.
Sure.
You know, and
that's your history.
Huh?
That's your history.
Well, what I heard in my mind was I'm home.
Yeah.
You know, like Charlton Heston does at the end of Planet of the Apes when he sees the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And he looks up and
was
it's funny. But when he looks up, the realization moment where he goes, I'm home.
Yeah.
I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, and you didn't know.
That's what happened to me. People said what you experienced is an epiphany.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a religious feeling, you know, and that's what I felt. And I says to myself, when this museum exhibit closes and goes back to Poland, it's going to be gone. No one's going to remember this. I said, I got to put something together to keep the memory here so that people will not forget what contribution this brought to the table in Polish history. So I took it on my own to recreate as best as I could from memory that exhibit. And I got a 10-foot by 20-foot carport, you know, you put it together with the pipes. Yeah. And I got fucking yards and yards of canvas. And then I went to fabric stores down in downtown LA. And I got the closest thing I could find that was resemblant of Islamic patterns.
Yeah.
You know, I can, once you're hip to the frequency of what you're looking at, it just comes to you naturally. We've seen these patterns in the background of every cowboy movie on the wallpaper. Okay, it's just the certain patterns that the Islamic people use in their textiles and their culture that repeat over and over again on their carpets, things like that. So, and I put this together and I built a 10-foot by 20-foot tent that was supposed to recreate a captured tent from Vienna. I wound up getting some money together and got my first suit of armor. I made my own wings, which were not exactly like perfect, but they were close.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I built an encampment, and I started to introduce this at Renaissance fairs. Why? Because it gave high visibility to that crowd, and now I can start to try and help educate people as to the new player in town that's in the Renaissance circuit. And I'm telling you, I ran against all kinds of ignorant, culturally ignorant, historically ignorant people making, you know, really cutting remarks and like who you supposed to be. I mean, you know, we had fur hats with a feather in it. You know, you wear a long, like a coat called a jupon, which is a tunic. You know, and people's lack of exposure to this kind of history, first thing out of the mouth is, who are you supposed to be, Vlad the Impaler? You know, because you know it's that
totally different.
You know, the Balkans, the Slavic areas of Central and Eastern Europe. That's all people see from movies. That's all they know. So
it's not. I mean, even the Polish influence on our country in the American Revolution and things like that. That's not even taught. Okay?
No, it's not. No,
you know, and so I could understand how people just don't even know.
The father of American cavalry is Casimir Pulaski.
Right.
Okay. He came over from Europe at the behest of Benjamin Franklin to help Washington's army.
Right.
And it got to be so frustrating for him because he's like, by the book. This is how we do it. And he was rubbing people the wrong way. The other American officers were getting pissed off at him because they didn't want to do it by the book his way. So he resigned his military ranking and created his own Pulaski regiment. And he wound up pulling Washington's ass out of the fire a couple of times.
That's right.
Like that until at the Battle of Savannah, he took a cannonball in the leg.
Yeah.
And that was a fatal wound. He died shortly after that.
Right.
But everything subsequently that we know about cavalry fighting in the United States was introduced by Pulaski.
Right.
Including every time you see a John Wayne film and the cavalry's charging with the sabers, the charge of cold steel, that all came from Pulaski. Mm-hmm. Now, I connected the dots. Pulaski's relatives, his older relatives, fought with Sobieski at the Battle of Vienna. So essentially, what Pulaski was introducing to the United States was descended down the lines from the Winged Hussars and the Polish cavalry.
That's amazing.
You want to connect the dots. Everything we know about Polish cavalry came from the Winged Hussars.
Wow.
So people need to know this fact.
This is why I was out of rock and roll for a little over a decade. I was doing a lot of research and studying and trying to put together literature, be it in flyers or whatever, that we could give out as handouts to people at these events. And eventually from Renaissance fairs, I'm telling you, it's just as bad as the rock scene with the drama and the ego and the backstage.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So we started doing military timelines. So what that is like it's military history from like ancient Rome to the Gulf War.
Right.
We had a niche. We were like perfect. We had an era of history that nobody was representing. And every time somebody would come and see us, they'd be like, wow, what the hell is this?
That's amazing.
So I like to think that we brought something of worth and value to the table culturally and historically. And we wound up winning a lot of awards in the process.
Yeah.
I wanted to meet the Pope and get a papal blessing because at the time the Pope was Polish.
Yeah, Pope John Paul. Yeah.
Right, but he died, so that didn't happen.
Right.
And I'm figuring, okay, how else can I get this message out to the English-speaking world? Because this is big in Europe. This is as big in Europe to the Europeans as the Civil War reenactments are to people in America.
Right.
Okay, it's that big. But people in America don't know about that. So subsequently, I get a call one day out of the blue from this production company out of Toronto, Canada. And what they have is there's a cable TV show called Museum Secrets. But what they do is they go to museums around the world, and they see stuff that's out of the ordinary, and they go, tell us about that? What's that all about? What's that? And they went to the museum in Moscow, the Art Museum of Art in Moscow, and they saw some Winged Hussar armor in a display case. Now, that was not captured. Poland never lost like that to Russia.
Yeah.
So it had to be like stolen from like during World War II.
Sure.
But anyway, they had some of the armor and one wing in a display case, and they asked the woman about that, and she explained it to them. So when they came back to the North American continent, they told me they did a search all through the internet looking for somebody who could explain this to them. And there's a couple other reenactor groups on the East Coast, not on the level we did it, but they did a good job. Anyway, they said, we contacted all these people, and you seem to be like the go-to guy. Can we come to you and film? We want to talk about the wings. Do they make a noise? And we want to talk about the weapons. I said, sure. So we worked out a deal, and they couldn't afford to fly their whole film crew to California. So it was the producer and his sister, the producer and director, and they hired a local crew. But they usually shoot over the space of a week. They didn't have that kind of time in the budget. We had to condense everything into one day. So we didn't get a chance to cover all the weapons like that. So we came to our ranch in Agua Dulce, and we had a nice windy day. And yes, sometimes the feathers do make a noise under the right circumstances. It's hit or miss, but it's not loud enough to scare the enemy's horses to hear.
Right.
On a battle, you got cannons, you got muskets. Yeah, you're not
going to hear wings.
But the feathers vibrate up and down like on a Venetian blind in the wind.
It was an image thing, right? Really, more just the idea of these winged, armored people coming at you.
Shock and awe.
Shock and awe. That was what it was supposed to be.
Right. Psychological.
You see a bunch of guy in wings, you fucking run. Demon.
Well, it automatically, visually, it automatically doubled what you look like. So if 150 guys look like 300.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can see that with the wingspan.
Depending on who you talk to, people in Poland say, well, the Tartars would lasso the riders off the horse with the rope. And then when the rope would go over the wings, it'd pull the wings off and the rider's still on the horse. So it depends who you talk to, what the purpose of the wings were for. And we've gone around and around and around with this with a lot of researchers. They didn't always wear the wings. Their reputation preceded them where they didn't have to. Early on, they wore the wings on the backs of the saddles, like that. Some had one, some had two. The Polish hussars had them. The Lithuanian hussars had them, like that. And so, but to have this resplendent display of these wings arching over your head, it would scare the hell out of the enemy's horses. And if you could cause a rout, then everybody's going to run, and you just run them down. Like that, cause a rout. And then so they mic'd me, and we were trying to listen to playbacks for the wings, and we couldn't hear anything. So unfortunately, that didn't happen on that day. And then so we shot some footage with the lance, because the lances were the only weapon supplied by the king. They were like 18 feet long, and they were hollow. Now mine's made out of PVC because I can't keep damaging lances over and over. I don't have an assembly line, but it was a wooden dowel, and they would cut it in half, and they would gouge it out and hollow it. Then they'd put it back together and glue it and wrap it with silk thread.
Yeah. Now,
when you're charging on a horse and you're holding an 18-foot lance, that thing's going to wobble. It's hollow. So I never got a chance to ask the riders in Poland, how did they stop it from wobbling? Because you're gonna nail a guy in the chest with that thing. You got to get it on the right moment of the tip of the lance going up and down.
Yeah.
Like this, So I had to build some straw dummies, display dummies, and stuff them full of straw, and I would charge across the field at like a trot, and I'd stick the lance into and I'd let go. Like that, because it wouldn't break. These lances were designed. The lances were designed to shatter on impact. So when they hit a guy in the breastplate, the whole thing would just shatter and be like wooden shrapnel, and it would drive him and everybody behind him back, like that. And it create holes and be a rout like that.
Yeah.
So we did that, and like that. So I had to train. My wife helped a lot. My wife did most of the training with me with the horses, like that. But I had to get my horse accustomed to riding around with this almost 18-foot PVC lance, like that. And one of the secrets is around the pommel of the saddle is a leather strap that hangs down to your foot, and it forms a little leather cup. They call it a tuck. Like you can put your finger in it. Okay. What you did, the rider would put the back end of the lance in that. That would give him stability, so that when he charged, they would go from a walk to a trot to a canter to a charge in like moments.
Yeah.
Okay. And they would go from open rank to knee, open rank, knee to knee, like that. So it was hard to tell where they were going to hit you. And then as they got close enough, the order would be given, and they'd all lower the lances at the same time. So you had all these lances come down at you like that. And they got like this 12-foot pennant, silk pennant, snapping like a towel.
Wow.
So you got all this dazzling monstrosity going on. The guys on the ground, the horses, they don't know what the hell's coming at them. They see these guys in armor with these wings with leopard skin pelts on their shoulders. The horses would freak. They didn't know what it is coming at them. And then so as you charge, you raise up the back end, and you got that tension from that leather strap in the back end of the lance, so that when you make impact, you got something to stop the back end of it.
Yeah.
Instead of it just going out of your hand like that.
Yeah.
And so little by little, we got to know more and more about the secrets of how the secrets to a hussar's charge.
And that was all just because you had to reenact it, really. You reenacted it all. Yeah.
So we got this finally on tape. I say it's very significant because it's the first time, to my knowledge, that the subject is covered in the English language for an English-speaking audience, without bias and without anybody trying to poke fun or humor at the Polish people. Because I'm telling you, even at the military timelines, one of the things that you hear a lot of is that the Polish cavalry was so stupid in World War II they charged tanks.
Charged tanks. It's
Horseback. That's not true.
That didn't happen.
The Battle of Kroyanti, the Polish cavalry caught the German infantry napping in between the trees and in the grove.
Right.
And they slung rifles, and their bayonets were like, I don't know, almost 2.5 feet long. And they pulled their bayonets like a sword. And of course the officers had their sabers, and whoever else had sabers. And they did a charge at cold steel, and they overran the German position, which was very embarrassing to the Germans.
Sure.
Now, at that time, Poland had like state-of-the-art anti-tank guns. So it was not like they had to charge tanks with horses. They didn't need to do that. They pretty much fucked up the Germans that day. But that's not going to sit great with the officers in the high command. So you got beat by a bunch of Polish cavalry. What's wrong with you guys? The next day they came back with mechanized.
Right.
And of course and the Italian press was there.
Yeah.
And this is the story. They saw obviously Polish cavalry guys on the ground dead. They saw some dead horses here and there, got shot, and they went, "Oh, so they charged the tanks?" The Germans never one to let go of a good promo. They went, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened.
It's like propaganda.
Exactly. So that's what happened because I researched the battle.
No, I've read this exactly what you said. I've read that.
So these are forms of ignorance that I had to deal with. I got to bite my tongue. I got to bite my lip. Instead of getting angry at these people, you got to educate them. You know, you can't be pissed off all the time.
No,
you know, you got to be able to get them to hold still long enough to explain what really happened.
Well, Rik, I'm going to have to wind things down now. You've been a fantastic guest. There you go. And one last question. I just got to know: are you working on a book? Because if anybody needs to write a book, it's you.
That's funny you could say that. I started a book many years ago, and I can't. It's hard for me to edit myself and be disciplined enough to sit down every day and work on it.
Yeah.
It's in order to understand who I am today, I have to explain who I was yesterday. And there is some cathartic stuff in that book that I had to go through that was traumatic. It was some of it was sexually traumatic. With my experience with the nuns in parochial school in Greenpoint.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah, I got molested by my third grade nun.
Wow.
Not the priest, a nun.
Terrible.
So these are things that I've held in over the years, and I know I got to get this out of my system. You know, so I have to explain a lot of stuff that happened to me in my youth, which sets me up for later in life. I just finished J.J. French's book, Twisted Business. I'm finishing up Bob Daisley's book, For Fact's Sake. So I'm trying to see on how my contemporaries and my peers, how they write their books, you know, because I got a lot of information in here that's going to take a lot to absorb for the average reader.
I mean, you could write a book just about the military stuff you're talking about, but I mean, an autobiography is to me, just from everything you've talked about for the last 2 hours, I think it's in order.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been about 2 hours, and I could go another 2, but the program can't. So we're gonna
I have a tendency to be long-winded, but there's
not at all. You were fantastic.
It was very good.
When he was alive, my dad said, "Write a book, use a lot of pictures, and you don't have to say a lot." You know, the book would be like
military stuff was fascinating, man. The armor and wow, I never knew that. I'm gonna look that up now.
I mean, between, I'd have to put pictures in, and if I put pictures in, then I have to explain what the picture's about. So the book's gonna be real big.
You got a lot to say, man.
Part 1 and part 2.
Yep. So, all right. So thank you, Rik Fox, for coming on the RockerMike and Rob Presents show. Thank you very much.
Fantastic interview, man. Thank you a lot, man.
Let me do my Keanu Reeves.
There you go. Now, there's something that we say at the end of every show. What is it, Rob?
We don't get drunk, but we get
lumped up.
And we'll see you soon. And thank you, Rik Fox.
Nice to talk to New York again.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys stay safe out there. You got crazy people running that state.
That's true. You take care.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
The only podcast you will hear that will be music to your ears. You'll learn about bands you love or may not know, and it's only here on The Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on The Rock Show. Ooh, yeah, on The Rock Show. Don't tell your friends and everyone you know. Let's get lumped up on The Rock